Welcome to SurgiNet Anesthesia training video number 2. We'll pick up where we left off. I'm continuing to work through my to-do list, but let's say I want to add something that's not in my to-do list, such as crystalloids, for example. I can click down here. I'm actually in the to-do list right here. I can click on the documentation window, and you'll see I have a lot of options here. I've got medications, intake, which is your fluids, and notice I've got subtypes: crystalloids, blood products, colloids. I have monitors I can initiate. Most of these, of course, have been started with my macro. I have output, so I can put estimated blood loss or urine output, G-tube or chest tube output. Here's the actions. Notice I have a lot of actions, from what I typically would do at the start, case times, airway management, and we'll just keep on working through this. There's a lot of options here. Definitely worth your time to explore these and see everything that's available. Just a lot of different options. And even reminders. So if you're at a point where you want to remind yourself to redose an antibiotic 3 hours into the case or anything here, you can do that. In fact, this is what the reminders tab is here. You can add a reminder for practically anything. And then finally, you got personnel. So here's all the possible supervising, your CRNAs, and you even have it divided by the different groups. So let's say we wanted to add lactated ringers to this patient, give an infusion. I'd go down here and pick what I wanted. Let's say it's a 1000 cc, the 1 liter bag. I would double click. Then it brings up this screen. It assumes I'm starting it at the current time of 1650. But of course I can change that. Let's say I hung the fluids maybe 10-20 minutes ago. I can change the time back. And here's the stop time. There's a lot of variation in how other hospitals and different anesthesiologists use this module for fluids. I've noticed, based on the way our anesthesiologists document, that we typically put a start time with a line, and then we put the amount of fluids that let's say we started it and then it ran for about an hour, hour and a half, and we had infused 200 cc's or 300, we'd write 300. Or if we ran the whole bag in over a long case, put 1000, and then ran another additional 400 or 500 cc's, and then we'd add that 400, and at the end total it up. So it was 1000 plus 400, we'd have 1400. Here it's probably just as well to start the bag, put it at the time you want, and start the bag. So now here the infusion is listed, and you have the bag started here. We didn't really indicate a rate, so it's just going to keep running. And we'll let that run for a minute, and then when we get ready to suspend the case, we'll come back to that. So let's say we also wanted to give the patient some blood, and we wanted to document that we gave the patient some blood. I would double click here, and I'm just going to start the bag as well. So we're going to go back to our to-do list and finish documenting. While we're here, though, I could, if I wanted to, add another personnel. I could add let's say a CRNA to the case. So he came in about this time. And another option too, let's say I'm leaving the case and another anesthesiologist is coming on board, I can actually stop myself and should consider signing as well. And then you can come and add another anesthesiologist at the time I stopped. But we'll just assume for this purpose, I'm going to be on the case the entire time. I'll go back up here, and patient changed back to normal sinus rhythm on my EKG, and you see there's our NSR. So back to our to-do list. I'm going to remove will here because I can't sign for him at the end of the case. So, much of this is done out of turn, so forgive me. Once again, I can just drag it down here and alter it if I want to here. Just depends on what you get used to doing. And here's the supervisor attestation. So after all this is done, once you've done induction, you can go ahead, and intubation, you can go ahead and do one of your supervisor attestations. And I can say it's me, and I was physically present during the induction. So I keep working through the PQRS. Notice I probably should have right-clicked that and said modify up in the to-do list, but doesn't matter. Multiple ways to do it. These are all required fields. So I'm just working my way through. Now we're going to emerge. We're going to do emergence with the patient. I can edit it up here if I want to. I can change the time if I want to. I moved it a little into the future. Transport. Just keep working through. And then the handoff is one where you need to take some steps. Right click, edit handoff, or I can click here and click down here, edit. So I've got to document the systolic. Keep in mind these are touch screens in the OR. So this, if you're using a touch screen, this will be a little easier. Notice the temperature is in Celsius. I do expect plenty of complaints about that. This is an issue with Cerner that they made some decisions in the very early days of the company that are difficult to undo, and they assure us that this is not something they can now go back and change to something as simple as Fahrenheit. Unfortunately, we're just going to have to get used to Celsius and centimeters for height. Let's say I'm going to finalize the case and move this patient out to the PACU, and then I'll go back in and finish the case. But before I do so, let's say if I go up to suspend the case, if I have not done something with my fluids, I'll have some problems. Because you see here, 0 milliliters, 0 milliliters. So I'll go here and click on this again. And now I'll do a stop time. If it's right now, I can say N for now on my keyboard, N. It gives me a stop time. And of course, this is not reflecting reality, but let's say I did put 1,000 cc's in, and I'd say okay. Here's my 1,000 cc's. Now here's my blood. Let's say I say now, and I say, let's just say 150, just for demonstration purposes. Now I've stopped those infusions. As you can see, we can go up and suspend the case. I'll say yes, we want to stop charting. I'll say no. And now the case is suspended. So once now the patient is in the PACU, I go back into the patient's chart. I say select chart. Remember that I did something funny. I went back to the 20th of September. So this is not typically something you'll have to bother with, but bear with me. I'll find my patient, Melinda Test. In this case, it was our cholecystectomy. I'll double click on it. There was a record already associated with the chart. As we saw, there was a check mark. Here's my chart. I'm back to where I was. And now I'm going to finish charting on this patient. So now I'm ready. If I'm ready to do an anesthesia stop time, I can drag it down there. I can right click. I can double click on it to move it down to the taskbar, but I'm just going to edit it right here if I want to change the time. But let's say I'm happy with it. Now it's time for the supervisor attestations. We did one earlier, right here. And attesting to the induction. Well, these are designed to do one at a time. So if I edit, first I give my name, and they're designed to do one at a time. So I have to do each one. As you see, I'll go and keep editing them. I did my name first. Second, I'll say I was physically present during the induction. Third, I'll say I was attest to any procedures. Fourth, I'll say that I was comment on the emergence. And fifth, physically present for key portions. That method of doing things was by internal decision with the. We obviously had some discussions with among physicians and IT and nursing, but we'll see how this works after go live. We'll have some opportunities to make some adjustments. So we've now documented everything we need, and now it's time to finalize the case. Here's my start and stop time. I'll also have one for a CRNA if I have one on the case. Say OK. And now it's time to start signing. And there is a good bit of signing going on here. As you see, there's several things that I have to sign off on. So I start with the very first one. I use my credentials. I'm going to copy my username. That's going to make it a little bit faster. I said Control-C, and I just I'll say Control-V to paste. Type in my password. Just keep signing it. Signing up all my attestations. Keep going. Almost there. Everything here is signed. Now I got to sign the entire record. That's a lot, I understand. And finalize. So you'll see the chart is finalized up here. We can exit out and go about our business. I'll stop this video, and number 3 we'll talk about how to deal with a blank record.